Inventory management. There are the instances where the efficiency in supply chain can be ensured by the efficiency in inventory. To be more precise, by maintaining efficiency in inventory reductions. Many strategies are developed in the objectives of streamlining inventories beyond the supply chain and holding the inventory investments as low as possible. The supply chain managers bend into maintain the inventories as low as possible because of the inventory investment. The cost of investment related with owning inventories can be high. The cost of comprise the cash outlay that the necessary for purchasing their inventories. The cost of acquiring the inventories and the cost of relating with the managing the inventory. Inventory management, one of the best and one of the most important in our business. Dito po natin malalaman ang variances, negative or positive, once the inventory. We have monthly inventory, yearly or year-end inventory, and also daily inventory. So, based on sa mga experience natin through work, especially in hospitality industry, ginagawa natin yung inventory. It's not all the items or product or food items, lahat na rin po ng mga equipments natin, ini-inventory po natin yan para lalo nating malaman kung malulugi ba or hindi. Meron tayong positive and negative variance. Yung mga variance po, it's yung difference ng bawat item. Next. Inventory. Before understanding the role of inventory in supply chain, we need to understand the cordial relationship between the manufacturer and the client. Holding clients, coping up with their demands, and creating relationship with manufacturer is critical section of managing supply chains. There are many instances where we see the concept of collaborative relationship being marked as the essence of supply chain management. However, a deeper analysis of supply chain relationships, especially those including product flows, expose that at the heart of these relationships in inventory movement and storage. More than that, half of this relies on the purchase, transfer, or management of the inventory. As we know, inventory plays a very important role in the supply chains, being a silent feature. The most fundamental functions that inventory has in supply chains were as follows. Number 1, to supply and support the balance of demand and supply. Number 2, to effectively cope with the forward and reverse flows in the supply chain. Companies need to manage the upstream supplier exchange and the downstream customers' demands. In the situation, the company enters a stage where it has maintained a balance between the fulfilling the demands of the customers, which is mostly very difficult to predict with the precision or accuracy, and maintaining adequate supplies of materials and goods. This balance can be obtained through inventory.
Optimization model. Ang mga modelo ng pag-optimize ng supply chain ay ang mga modelong nag-codify ng mga practical o totoong buhay ng mga issue sa mathematical model. Bilang karagdagan dito, ang ilang mga hadlang ay dinadagdag sa mga isyung ito para sa pagtukoy ng posible na rehiyon. Mixed Integer Linear Programming. Ang MILP ay isang mathematical modeling approach na ginagamit upang makuha ang pinakamahusay na resulta ng isang system na may ilang paghigpit. Ang modelong ito ay malawakang ginagamit sa maraming lugar ng pag-optimize tulad ng pagpaplano ng produksyon, transportasyon, disenyo ng network at iba pa. Binubuo ang MILP ng isang linear na layunin na function kasama ang ilang limitasyon na binuo ng tuloy-tuloy na integer na mga variable. Ang pangunahing layunin ng modelong ito ay upang makakuha ng pinakamainam na solusyon ng layunin ng function. Maaaring itong pinakamataas o pinakamababang halaga, ngunit dapat itong makamit ng hindi lumalabag sa alinman sa mga hadlang na pananaw.
Stochastic modeling is a mathematical approach for representing data or predicting outcomes in situations where there is a randomness or unpredictability to some extent. For example, in a production unit, the manufacturing process generally has some unknown parameters like quality of the input materials, reliability of the machines, and competence within the employees. These parameters have an impact on the outcome of the manufacturing process, but it's impossible to measure them with absolute values. In this type of cases, we need to find absolute value for unknown parameters which cannot be measured exactly. We use stochastic modeling approach. This modeling strategy helps in predicting the result of this process with some defined error rate by considering the unpredictability of these factors. Ito po yung yung summarize niya po. Stochastic model is a tool for estimating probability distributions of potential outcomes by allowing for random variation in one or more inputs over time. The random variation is usually based on fluctuations observed in historical data for selected period using standard time series. Uncertainty modeling. While using a realistic modeling approach, the system has to take uncertainties into account. The uncertainty is evaluated to a level where the uncertain characteristics of the systems are modeled with probabilistic nature. Pangalawa, we use uncertainty modeling for characterizing the uncertain parameters with probability distribution. It takes dependencies into account easily as input, just like Markov chain, or may use the queuing theory for modeling the system where weighting has an essential role. These are common ways of modeling uncertainties. Additional ko lang sa the uncertainty modeling approaches. The main purpose of these methods is to measure the impact of uncertain input parameters on the system output parameters. However, the main difference between this method is to utilize different approaches implemented for describing the uncertainty of input parameters.
At nandito ako para i-report ang capacity at inventory. Ayon sa aking nalalaman, ang kapasidad ay nagkakaroon ng pagmamanufaktura o pagpapadala at pag-iimbak ng mga produkto sa isang supply chain management. Ang inventory naman, ito ay nagkakaroon sa loob ng supply chain management at dinadala upang bumuo at ayusin ang mga produkto. Kaya marami pa sa atin ang kailangan tukuyin at pamamahala ng kita. Bilang ang aplikasyon at diferensyal ng pricing batay sa segment ng customer, oras ng paggamit at availability ng produkto o surplus ng supply chain management. Ibig sabihin, kung ikaw ay isang mamimili, kailangan mong tukuyin ang mga produkto ng kanilang pinagbebenta. At sa isang produkto ay may iba't ibang pagkakaiba ng mga presyo. At ito naman ang revenue management plays a major role in supply chain and has a share of credit in the probability of supply chain when one or more of the following conditions exist. First, the product value differs in different market segment. Ibig sabihin, ang isang produkto ay mahalaga sa atin. Katulad na lamang ng mga produkto natin dito sa ating Pilipinas, ito ay ating pinapahalagahan. At ang ating mga produkto ay maabot na din sa iba't ibang bansa. Second naman is, the product is highly perishable or product tends and be defective. Sa madalit sabi, kung papabayaan natin ang ating mga produkto o kung ano man yan, or pagkain, ay maaaring masira or magkakaroon ng depekto sa ating mga pinagbebentang mga produkto. Third, demand has seasonal and other peaks. Ayon sa aking nalalaman, ang demand daw ay may iba't ibang tugatog ng isang supply chain management. Kung ikaw ay magaling na magbebenta, maaari kang kumita ng malaking halaga. Fourth is, the product is sold both in bulk and the spot market. Sa madalit sabi, kahit pa ikaw ay isang vendor or may katulad ka sa isang supermarket, kailangan mo pa din magpursigang magbenta. Kahit naman ikaw ay may katulad na pinagbebenta ng iyong produkto, kung sa iyo din naman papatok, kung yung binebenta mo naman ay papatok sa mga tao, basta pulido ang pagkakagawa ng iyong mga produkto. At ang mga mamamili naman, sila naman yung mga nagdedesisyon kung saan nila gustong bumili.
Revenue management, also known as yield management, refers to a pricing strategy in which the prices of goods or services are set depending on the consumer demand at any point in time. Also, the combination of pricing and strategies to increase production. Revenue management is the art and science of enhancing firm revenues while selling essentially the same quantity of product. The emphasis of revenue management is on increasing revenue unit or sold, unlike marketing where the emphasis is more towards increasing revenues through increasing market share or the number of units sold. Revenue management is often concerned with predicting demand and optimizing price and availability in an effort to boost revenue. An even more professional approach is also to take into account all spend revenue per area, per room, and also take into account all distribution and operational costs. There are main concepts used in revenue management: fixed capacity, perishable product, high fixed cost and low variable cost. The product can be priced differently, demand evolves, the product can be sold in advance, the market can be segmented.
This formula can be applied of manufacturer to reduce the cost of spoilage and spill. Where CH is reserved capacity for higher price segment, PL is the price for lower segment, and lastly, PH, the price for higher segment. The use of segmentation, which increases the amount of asset availability for the high price segment, is an important point to consider. Building multiple versions of a product that focus on different segments is a specific strategy that can be used for differential pricing. So, this idea can be better understood by looking at real-life examples of managing revenue for multiple customer segments, which is the airline industry.
Perishable assets. Any assets that lose in value in due course of time is considered as a perishable item. For example, all fruits, vegetable, and pharmaceutical. We can also include computers, cell phones, fashion, apparel, etc. Whatever loses value after the launch of new model is considered as a perishable. So, dito po, yung pong mga item na hindi na masyadong nabebenta po sa market ay tinatawag na perishable item. Tulad po ng mga computer, cellphone, mga fashion apparel. So, ito po yung mga item na hindi na masyadong mabenta sa market dahil ito po ay nasasapawan ng mga bagong model na inilalabas. pwede pong gawin sa mga perishable items ay tulad po ng sa cellphone. Ito po ay nawawalan po ng demand if pagka naglabas po ng bagong launch na cellphone at that time, mahal pa ang bentahan. Then after makapag-launch ulit ng bagong model, yung latest po is madededman na. Kumbaga, saka po papasok yung pag-drop price ng product para sa marketing strategy na masusure na mabebenta pa din yung product kahit hindi na siya in demand. Seasonal demand. One of the major application of the revenue management can be seen in the seasonal demand. Here, we can see a demand shift from the peak to the peak of the peak duration. Hence, a better balance can be maintained between supply and demand. It also generates higher overall profit. The commonly used effectively and efficient revenue management approach to cope with seasonal demand is to higher price during peak time duration and lower price during off-peak time duration. This approach leads to transferring demand from peak to peak period. So, madaling explanation po dito is, for example po, is Christmas season po ngayon. In demand po ang ham. Target price sila mula unang araw ng Christmas season. Then, when off-peak times come, pag ando na araw ng off-peak time, magdadrop price din sila ng product para matarget yung quantity demand na kailangan nila para sa particular na product.
When we talk about managing revenue for bulk and spot demand, the basic trade-off is somewhat congruent to that of revenue management for multiple customer segments. The company has to make a decision regarding the quantity of asset to be booked for spot market, which is higher price. The book quantity will depend upon the difference in order between the spot market and the bulk sale along with the distribution of demand from the spot market. There is a similar situation for the client who tends to make the buying decision for production, warehousing, and transportation asset. Here the basic trade-off between signing of long-term bulk agreement with a fixed lower price that can be wasted if not used and buying in the spot market with higher price that can never be wasted. The basic decision to be made here is to size up the bulk contract. Sabi dito, ang kumpanya ay kailangang gumawa ng desisyon tungkol sa dami ng asset na maibook para sa spot market. Ang spot market ay kung saan ang mga financial instrument tulad ng mga kalakal, pera at mga mahalagang papel ay pinagpapalit para sa agarang paghahatid. Ang dami ng nabook ay depende sa pagkakaiba sa pagkakasunod-sunod sa mga pagitan ng spot market at ng bulk sale. Ang layunin ng bulk sale ay upang mabawasan ang pag-aasam na ang may-ari ng isang negosyo ay magbenta ng lahat o karamihan ng mga ari-arian ng isang negosyo at pagkatapos ay mawala kasama ang pera. At ito ay sakop ng ating batas, ang Act number 3952 of Bulk Sales Law. Mayroong katulad sitwasyon para sa kliyente na may posibilidad na gumawa ng desisyon sa pagbili para sa produksyon, warehousing at mga asset ng transportasyon. Narito ang pangunahing trade-off ay sa pagitan ng pagpirma sa matagalang bulk na kasunduan na may nakapirming mas mababang presyo na maaring masayang kung hindi gagamitin at pagbili sa spot market na may mas mataas na presyo na hindi masasayang. Ang pangunahing desisyon na gawin dito ay ang laki ng bulk contract. Bulk contract means those contract with commercial customers that provide for provision of service to all units in the property owned by the commercial customer, and the monthly payment to borrower for such commercial customer covering all unit in the property regardless of whether the consumer customer or resident in the individual units in such property elect to utilize the service provided by borrower and all rights, title, and interest in and payments under any of the foregoing.
Morning, I am Mark Janlay Dumlita. A formula that can be applied to achieve optional amount of the asset to be the purchase in a bulk is given below. If demand is normal with mean and the standard deviation, the optional amount due to be purchased in a bulk is this formula where the P probability demand for the asset doesn't exceed Q, the optional amount of asset to be purchased in a bulk. The amount of bulk purchase increase if either the spot market price increase of the bulk price decreases. We can now conclude the revenue management is nothing but application of different pricing on the basis of customer segment time of use, and product of capacity availability to increase supply chain profit. It comprises marketing, finance, and operation function to maximize the net profit earned.